Quebec, Canada, fighting Troy the Destroyer Dorsey, 12 rounds for the World Super Lightweight Championship.
What are you going to do now as far as kickboxing?
First, I want to thank God. Say hello to my wife, Shelly and Kendra. Happy birthday, Shane. And thank all of my instructors and students at my school. Now, pick up kickboxing and boxing both again and go out there a world title.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. All right. The winner and still Hurricane World Super Lightweight Champion of the World, Troy the Destroyer Dorsey!
Hey Destroyers, what's up? It's your girl, Bryce George, hosting every single episode of If the Gloves Could Talk, featuring Troy the Destroyer Dorsey. Today, we are going to be showcasing episode 9 of this fun series with Mr. Dorsey, and we've got a lot of great content to be showing you guys. You're going to be seeing an interview later in the podcast. You're also going to be seeing a past recording that we did with Troy over a year and a half ago. So lots of things to dive into. So let's go ahead and get started. Right after this segment, we'll be back to talk more.
What I like to talk about today is kind of go into, what was it like as a child in school? I know you said that the reason you started karate was you were being bullied, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Why don't you tell me, how old were you when the bullying started? What was that bullying like? Kind of just tell me about that experience.
Well, the best that I can remember, and I can remember pretty good when you're talking about this, affected my whole life, being bullied. And bullying is a really huge problem in America now, today. It's so sad that you see so many children getting bullied, and there have been some that have killed the person that was bullying them, and also there have been several instances of kids getting bullied, committing suicide. That's major. That's major. So I never had that feeling when I was being bullied. I just felt I didn't know what to do, and I was afraid. And just most of it was bullying, where they just pick on you without touching you. So I guess it was mental bullying. I was so short and I was so little. And at times I really felt like something might be wrong with me, why I was so short. But I had shortitis because my dad was short, my mother was short, my grandmother was real short, my grandfather was 6'1", and I always looked up to him, and in more than one way, by just looking up, but in more than one way. My Papa Sampson, he was 6 foot, and I was just knew that I was gonna be growing. I was growing slow, and I was good, but I was going to be his height. But God had a different plan, so it was all in God's plan for me to be the height that I am. So I started getting picked on, like I said something about earlier. It wasn't that much that they were punching me or kicking me. They were just saying things to me, saying mean things to me that made me feel bad, made me feel not good. And so that summer, so I was in 5th grade when it started, and then between 5th grade and 6th grade is when I started martial arts. The best that I can come up with, that was the summer of '74. So next year I'll be able to celebrate my 50th year in martial arts.
Would you say that when you were a child and you started doing martial arts, would you say you got a confidence that you hadn't had before?
Oh yeah, I knew I was Bruce Lee. No doubt. Chuck Norris. I was tough. So I did the summer of martial arts. So see, I was already earned my first belt, I believe. No, I think maybe I didn't. Anyways, yeah, I earned my first belt. So yeah, I thought I was something, and I went back to school, and with this confidence of, okay, if you want to fight, I'll fight you.
Would you say, did the kids still pick on you after you started martial arts, or?
This is the thing. Once I started fighting back, in other words, standing up for myself, it stopped. It stopped. So that's what I recommend to anybody that's being bullied. I can't recall what it's called. Oh, verbal bullying. Mm-hmm. You got verbal bullying. You got physical bullying. I'm not sure what other kind of bullying there is, but yeah.
Emotional bullying.
What'd you say?
Emotional bullying.
Emotional bullying. That's hurts.
Mm-hmm.
So the physical it hurts also, but the emotional can even be more sometimes. People forgetting that God put seeds of greatness inside each one of us, and forgetting that He has a plan for our life, and forgetting that He's called us to be strong and not to be a pushover or a coward. Or I'm not calling anybody any names. I know I was just really scared. I guess you could call that, I was a coward.
Would you go ahead, Troy?
So when I went back to school, I had this new confidence of, okay, I'm fighting you back. So I get this kid. I remember his name. His name is kind of hard to remember. His name was Troy. And he came up and started messing with me, and I hit him. I punched him. And we had to go to the office, and we both got, they used to call it licks. He had a big board, about this long, about this narrow, and about that thick. So it was long. Pow! Now they can't whip children, and I think that's one of the problems with society today. There's no consequences for people, or for children, or for somebody to there's no consequences.
Did it feel good when you
I
finally
got licks also, because I hit the guy back, but this guy been picking on me for probably a year. So, what was your question?
Did it feel good to finally hit him back, though?
Yes. Yes, it felt good. It felt good. It's just kind of embarrassing to say, but I threw this punch. And I punched and I hit him kind of with this part of my hand. Of course, I meant to hit him with my fist. I didn't turn it over like I did on the overhand right with the quickest knockout in boxing.
So have you had any students of your own, Troy, that have been victims of bullying?
Have I what now?
Have you had any students of your own at your studio
yes,
who
sir.
have been victims of bullying?
Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yes, I have. There are many of our students have. I'm thinking of one right now. I'm not going to mention his name, but he came to me about a year ago, and he was getting bullied, and then he stood up for himself. He told the teacher. I tell the teacher that little, I'll just use my name, Troy is picking on me, and well, it's not my name, it was the other guy's name. And then go sit back down at your desk, and then he starts doing it again. Go tell him again. And then, third time, they struck out. Go ahead and do something. And I would recommend something like a punch in the chest, and just full steam ahead, punch the chest.
So you believe in self-defense?
I do believe in self-defense. Now, when someone's really trying to hurt you, really trying to hurt you, that may, like someone pulls a knife, someone pulls a gun, or all of a sudden someone's in front of you that is trying to take your money and pointing a gun at you. That's real serious. That's real serious. But it's so sad that the children are taking their own lives because they're being bullied. So martial arts is great for that, building self-confidence, and we teach fight only if you have to. If you're getting hit, you got to hit somebody back.
Do you see confidence in your students, though? The ones that have been bullied, do you see that confidence change?
Well, oftentimes I don't see it because I only see them usually 45 minutes class, and so an hour and a half a week. But oftentimes the parents will tell me that their confidence has grown, and they are not getting picked on anymore. And so it's really, oftentimes it's just the way that you walk. So if I walk like this, and I'm looking around like I'm afraid, then a bully's gonna pick on you. Or if you're short like me and they don't know anything about you, then they're probably gonna pick on you. But if you walk with your shoulders back and your chest, I'm not saying like this, but straight, walk straight, you look people in the eye, you talk to them confident, there's a lot less likelihood of someone picking on you. So the way you walk, the way you talk is so important. Even they've done studies with women in the parking lot. If you're looking around, if you're alone, of course, oftentimes they are alone, but just the stereotype person they might, or woman or man they might attack is someone that just looks like they're really afraid. So don't look afraid. You have to fake it sometimes. You have to fake it. We all fake a lot of things. But faking like looking the person in the eye, standing straight up, and facing your fears or facing a bully can be a good thing so that it doesn't happen.
So would you say, Troy, that you recommend to anyone who's dealing with bullying that they should try martial arts?
Oh yes, martial arts is great for building. Not only are you learning the skills of martial arts, kicking and punching, elbowing, stomping the foot, biting, but you're also strengthening your body, strengthening your mind, strengthening your confidence, your focus. Many times, as I said earlier, my parents have told me, oh, he's not getting picked on anymore. He's more confident. He's making better grades at school. He's doing his chores around the house. We have a character education program so that the children are doing things they're supposed to be doing at home and at school, making good grades. That they cannot be promoted unless they're making passing grades and an A in conduct. Now I think the A in conduct has disappeared. I think they're just saying now that they only get the kids are only get a grade if it's a bad grade. I don't know why they don't give good grades. To me, you get a good grade. I know when I made an A, that meant a lot to me, and it meant a lot to my dad. But when I made a C, that didn't mean much to me, and my dad was really upset And of course, if I made an F or a 0 or I flunked, then my dad was not happy, and we got in trouble. So our goal was to make the best grades we could make. And as I said, I don't believe they have the A in conduct anymore. It's just they only get graded on their behavior if they're doing bad.
Have you ever had a student of yours who has had poor behavior?
Has had what?
Has had poor behavior, or has had behavioral issues?
Oh, yes.
What's that like?
Yes. We've had them they get out there in class, and we do what we call, we start the class, and then the kid, some that have had children, not very many, just start running around. And most of the time, or in the cases that I've had that, is because they're too young. We start children at 4 years old. We have a 4, 5, and 6-year-old class. We call that the Little Ninjas class.
That's cute.
Yeah, and there have been some children that age in that Little Ninjas class. They just still were not old enough, or they were so mature, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and 6. They were doing so well, we moved them up to the regular class with the 7-year-olds. Come on. My name is Troy Dorsey. We offer martial arts and karate training and fitness kickboxing training. Our karate program is for men, women, and children of all ages. From 4 and a half, we even have a student that's 91 years old. Also, we teach fitness kickboxing. It's a 1-hour non-contact class of punching and kicking a bag, because hitting a bag is like weightlifting to help strengthen and tone your muscles. Give us a call at 817-477-5523. Come in and see us today and start your martial arts experience with us now.
All right. That's so fun, always getting to see those past recordings that we did with Troy and just seeing where we're at now. Time really does change things. We've got a fun interview coming up with Mr. Keith Yates. He's the president and founder of the American Karate and Taekwondo Associations. He's a world-renowned writer, and he has written over 17 books and over 500 articles, so lots of great stuff to talk about. And not just that, he was one of the youngest black belts in the country. He got his black belt at 17. He's been teaching, he has competed, he is just basically loves to learn, and I think there's a lot we can learn from him. So right after this interview, we'll be back to recap this episode. Welcome back, Destroyers, to If the Gloves Could Talk. I'm your host, Bryce George, and my favorite part of every episode is the interview segment. And we have a very, very special guest with us today, Troy and Mr. Keith Yates. How are y'all doing?
Doing good. Thanks for having us.
How about you, Troy?
I'm doing good also. Yes, ma'am. It's a nice rainy morning over here in Forney.
Yes,
well, it's raining here too.
I know, this Texas weather, you never know what to expect. Last week was an Arctic freeze, and I'm actually okay with the rain as long as it doesn't freeze. You know, it can just keep on coming. I'm okay with that. But
right.
Mr. Yates is a very well-renowned fighter in the art of mixed martial arts, and he is our guest for today's show. So, Mr. Yates, if you could just introduce yourself to our guest, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into martial arts.
Well, I actually started training martial arts in 1965. I was 14 years old that summer. Alan Steen, who opened the first karate school in Texas, he taught at several places around the Dallas area, one of which was the Recreation Center in Richardson, Texas. And I was a middle school student in Richardson. my mom saw that they were offering karate up at the rec center. So I went up there that summer and started with Mr. Steen. I was the youngest person in class because back in the 60s, most of the people taking martial arts were late teens into their 20s, a lot of ex-military. So I was a young kid taking karate from him and just never stopped. So I made a black belt in 1968 at the age of 17, at the time his youngest black belt. And I started teaching when I was a brown belt. And have never stopped. So I've been teaching for, well, however long that is, since like 1967 to now. In fact, Mr. Steen recently told me that I'm probably the longest continually teaching martial artist in Texas. I mean, there were other people teaching in those days, but they've since either retired or passed on. So I'm still teaching. I'm 73. I still teach several times a week. And I've just never given it up. It's been a lifetime endeavor for me. So I appreciate everything the martial arts has done for me.
Where do you,
Well, it's
where do you
very
teach?
odd.
Let the people know where you teach, Mr. Yates.
Well, I teach at the Richardson YMCA on Tuesday nights. I'm actually teaching up here in McKinney. I'm teaching Tai Chi on Wednesdays. And on Saturdays, not every Saturday, but I teach black belts over at the Cooper Aerobics Center in Dallas. We teach a Kobudo class, which is an Okinawan style of weapons. Just think Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the sai and the nunchaku and so forth. And I teach that to the black belts.
Okay, that's great.
I love it. Pause. We're gonna edit this out, but oh, Troy's gone. There he is. Did someone accidentally call you?
Yes, yes, and I guess it didn't. I'm not on the. My wife and I put it on not accepting calls, but I guess it's accepting calls, so it didn't take long to get rid of them.
Troy, do you mind centering yourself a little bit more?
Centering.
Yeah.
You know, meditate and center yourself.
Exactly.
Is that better?
Okay. A little bit more.
This way.
Okay, that's better. Kayla, does that look good?
If it looks good to
Yes,
you, it looks
ma'am.
good to me.
Okay,
Yeah, it
perfect.
looks good.
I hear some alarm going off.
Well, it's my phone. I'll silence it over here.
Oh, you're fine. This is a nice part about pre-recording. We just edit this all, so no one has to know. All right, there we go. Okay, so I'm just going to get back into it. Mr. Yates, it's obvious that you love teaching so much that, can you tell us what your license plate says and what does that mean?
Well, several years ago, many years ago, in fact, my wife gave me a personalized Texas license plate that says Sensei. So I'm the only person in Texas that's got a Sensei license plate. Sensei is a term usually used in the martial arts, but in Japanese culture, it can be used for something like, I don't know, your school teacher, your a chef. Literally, sensei means one who has traveled further down the path. So it's used in a broader sense than just teacher, but like mentor or guide. And really, that's what a martial arts teacher traditionally has been, at least in Asia. You know, someone that you can look forward to for advice, not just in how to kick and punch, but maybe how to conduct yourself in life. Not a lot of American instructors necessarily fit into that category, but I think it's important for at least traditional martial artists to live that kind of lifestyle. I try to do that, and I know Mr. Dorsey does too at his school.
Yes, sir.
Troy, what's it been like? We've talked about it a lot on this show, but hearing what Mr. Yates is saying, what's it been like for you being a sensei to many people? And like we've talked about, many people who aren't just kids, you have students of all ages. What's that like getting to teach them?
Oh, it's been a blessing for sure, no doubt, to be able to help people become more confident and stronger and more fit. And it's just been a great well, like I said, blessing to be able to do that. And opening up my first school in 1981, and before I was 2 years teaching for Mr. Choate before he and I opened up the school over at the old TKI on Garland Road.
How cool. And
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I actually taught at that TKI. I was
really?
a head instructor. I was a head instructor at the North Dallas School on Hillcrest Avenue, which was, by the way, the first karate school in the entire state of Texas.
Wow.
But working for
Where was it at?
Steen,
Where was it at, Mr. Yates?
Hillcrest Avenue across from SMU. That was
Okay.
the first karate school in Texas. So he opened that one, and then he opened the one that you eventually owned over on Garland Road
Yes,
in
sir.
East Dallas. So I taught there. And then he opened another one in Richardson. I taught there. One on Webb's Chapel. I taught there. But eventually he had like 7 or 8 schools all over the Dallas area. And I taught at most of them. Being one of his young black belts, we would just kind of rotate from school to school.
Oh, that's really neat. I didn't know that.
So I do want to ask Mr. Yates, how did you and Troy meet? Do you remember?
Well, we were just talking about that. I can't really remember. It could be because I taught at the school that he eventually owned over there, probably through some tournaments and so forth. I do remember that I've done a couple of magazine interviews with him because I did a lot of writing for virtually all of the martial arts magazines back in the day. And so I think I interviewed him for Fighter magazine and probably Karate Illustrated and so forth. So we developed a relationship and got to know each other through those interviews for the magazine articles. And of course, Troy being a Christian believer and I working with the Gospel Martial Arts Union and being a professor at Dallas Theological Seminary, we've been able to share more than just martial arts, our love of the martial arts, but our love of God through our similar beliefs.
Yes, sir.
I love it. And I do want to go quickly back to you mentioning just being 17 when you got your black belt. What was that? Did you even realize at the time that you were one of the youngest people in the country with the black belt?
Well, probably not. It's funny. I look back on it now, and my instructors were Alan Steen and Skipper Mullins, June Rhee, who were all very famous martial arts people. And when you're a young student, you don't realize that. I mean, they're just your teachers. And so later on, when I started to have more knowledge of the martial arts community, I went, hey, my teachers were like really famous guys. Probably the same kind of thing that Troy Dorsey students realize when they sign up. He's just Mr. Dorsey, and they're in class enjoying themselves. And then later they find out, hey, wow, he's like really famous. So I've been blessed to have instructors who are very well known, very knowledgeable and skillful, and obviously working with those kinds of instructors, I've met so many people over the years. From Joe Lewis and Jeff Smith and Bill Wallace. Now I'm friends with all those guys that I idolized when I was a kid coming up through the ranks. So it's been really a journey, and like I said earlier, a lifetime pursuit.
I always say still that Troy doesn't realize he's a big deal, even to himself. He's very humble in that regard. And I actually read an interview about you, Mr. Yates. The writer was describing how you're the most humble person he had ever met, and I think that's something, of course, you two have very much in common. So.
Well, I think, the martial arts is supposed to teach humility. That's one of the tenets of the martial arts, but it doesn't always translate that way. I mean, admittedly, and not just martial arts, but any combat sport and any sport, as a matter of fact, whether it's baseball or football or so forth, if you become successful at it, it's kind of easy to get a big ego and get kind of full of yourself, especially when people come up to you and say, oh, I've read your books, or I want your autograph or something. That humility sometimes takes a back seat. And so I think, again, it's our faith in Christ, I think, that keeps us humble. And we realize that, what we've accomplished is not because we're so great necessarily, but we've had the ability and the blessings to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I do want to go on and ask something that definitely was brought up multiple times in some of the research I was doing of you is the word kata. What does that mean in your career? Why are you so well known for your katas, and what are they?
Well, kata is a Japanese word. Literally, it means to make a shape into the earth. So imagine you're out on the beach and you take a stick and you draw a shape in the sand, and that's a mold or a pattern. So lots of times in English they translate kata as pattern or form. So it literally means to shape your technique. And coming up through the ranks, I mentioned earlier that I was one of the youngest guys in the school. So even though I sparred with guys like Fred Wren and Skipper Mullins, they were older and bigger than I was. So I kind of gravitated towards the kata, the forms, the pattern, the training patterns that we did in school, and I got really good at it. So even though in my competitive career I won a few trophies in sparring, I won a lot of trophies in kata. And most of the other guys at the Texas Karate Institute were more interested in fighting. So it's kind of interesting. Back in the late 60s, we made a transition from Tang Soo patterns to Taekwondo patterns. That's a whole other area of history that we can get into at some time if you want to. But most of the black belts had to learn the new Taekwondo forms, and they were sent down from June Rhee in Washington, D.C., and he actually put them on Super 8 movie film, and they shipped it down to the schools in Texas, and then they put it on a projector and showed it on the back wall of the Garland Road School, Troy. And so we would all sit there and look at the videos of June Rhee doing the new forms. And then once the film was over, all the black belts would turn over and look at me, and I was a brown belt at the time, and they'd say, "Okay, Yates, what did he do?" So I ended up teaching most of the black belts the new Taekwondo forms, Chunji, Dangun, Tosan. And so I just became good at that. And that's where, like I said, I got most of my competitive wins. And then I wrote a book on kata that became kind of the Bible of Taekwondo forms that's still in print now, some 30 years later. So I put them on YouTube and so forth. So kata really became my thing, if you will. And I think that's probably one of the things that kept me involved in the martial arts too. For people that were just solely interested in winning sparring trophies, and I think Troy is the exception because he's a real traditional martial artist and has continued to teach. But a lot of the guys who won tournaments back in those days, after they got too old to compete, they just retired. But for me, I had gotten into the art, the kata part of the martial arts, and that kept me invigorated and interested, and that's why I'm still doing it today.
Wonderful. And can you tell us, have you ever sparred, Mr. Dorsey?
We actually have not, because we didn't actually train together. I've known him for years, but we haven't actually trained together. So yeah, he's always welcome to come over to class, and help us either teach seminars. And I do remember that a few years ago we had a Gospel Martial Arts Union seminar in Dallas, and he was one of the instructors. I invited him to come over, and he sparred everybody in the seminar. There must have been like 40 people, one after the other. That wasn't unusual in and of itself, but he was sick at the time. I remember that he was coughing and he had a cold, and he said, "Well, I'm not feeling very good, so I'm going to spar these 40 matches in a row." So he's just a real warrior and an inspiring teacher.
Thank
Do you
you,
remember?
Yates. I don't remember that. I don't remember it.
I have students that still talk about that. Hey, remember that time Troy Dorsey came and he sparred everybody?
I remember teaching over there, but I don't remember what happened.
Yeah.
He just does that
because you were sick.
I guess so.
Well, next time that happens, we need to get a camera and record, because we need to see you guys at least spar each other once, So.
Well, I'm old now. I can't
sure.
kick like I used to. That's for sure.
Oh,
well, I can still kick. I just can't kick as high. Let's put it that way.
Right.
What about you, Troy? Can you still do your kicks like you do?
I'm in the same boat. I'm in the process right now of getting hip surgery, going through getting a referral and those kind of things. So yeah, I haven't kicked in about a year because my left hip is really painful when I kick or if I try to kick.
I think
I'm
a lot
sure
of
that's
martial
right.
artists are in the same boat, and it's a repetitive stress injury. And I think interesting that most martial artists I know that are still practicing in their 60s and 70s are still in very good condition because you've got to stay in shape. But sometimes the toll of throwing 10,000 roundhouse kicks does take a toll on your body. I mean, I know I wrote an article in one of the magazines on hip replacement because I had one, and it seemed like everybody I called has had hip replacements. Chuck Norris, Bill Wallace, we've all had hip replacements. But the good news is I'm back kicking again. And I was back kicking again within a few months. So there's hope for you, Troy.
Okay, good. That's encouraging to hear.
And I want for my next question to learn a little bit more about Mr. Yates. Can you go into more detail about some of the well-known martial arts masters you've trained with in your career?
Well, like I said, I came up with Alan Steen and Skipper Mullins and June Ray, Pat Burleson, all the guys that taught here in Texas. But then I've had the opportunity to train with people in weapons and jiu-jitsu. I've got a black belt in jiu-jitsu from Ted Gambardella. I've got a black belt in weapons from Mike Proctor and John Boffman. These are all very traditional martial artists. And I've had the opportunity to actually go and teach all over the country, from, Florida to California to Minnesota and New York. The martial arts community is really kind of close knit. At least it was back in the old days, and I think it still is today, even though there's so many more martial artists practicing. In those days, if you had to travel to go do a seminar or a tournament, you just really had to go several states because they were few and far between. Nowadays, it seems like every weekend there seems to be a competition somewhere. And I have to say that some of the competitions have grandiose sounding names, like the Universal United World Championships that are held in some middle school gym somewhere. So you have to be a little careful and not necessarily take somebody's resume at face value. That's why I appreciate people like Troy Dorsey, who actually have a credible, recognized resume. And I think that's one of the things I have said to people that are interested in taking the martial arts. You really want to go and talk to the instructor and to the students and find out that the quality that you're getting, because it frankly can be all over the map sometimes.
Well, Troy, it sounds like you got the job. Your resume helped with that.
Yeah.
So. But no, for sure. When I first started this podcast, I've talked about a lot. I knew nothing about, martial arts or kickboxing or boxing. And it's just been incredible to learn about the art of it. Also, how lucky I am to have someone like Troy Dorsey in my life. Not a lot of people get to say that. So getting to know him, especially getting to do this podcast with him, has helped, grow my appreciation and respect for the sport. So thank you for that, Troy.
You're welcome. Something about Mr. Yates. So Mr. Steen was June Reed's black belt, right? Mr. Yates.
Yeah, he was his first black belt in the United States. June Reed came to the United States. June Reed came to the United States in 1956, and he introduced the Korean martial arts to America, actually in Texas, down in San Marcos, Texas, Texas State. And then Mr. Reed started teaching at the University of Texas, where Mr. Steen went to school. So he was in his very first Taekwondo class in the United States. And he eventually became the only guy out of that class to make black belt. And then he came back to his hometown of Dallas and opened, as I said, the first martial arts school in the entire state of Texas. Nowadays you drive around and there's karate schools in every corner practically. But in those days, there was one in Texas.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, I wanted to hear that story.
And I do want to touch on this too. We haven't mentioned it in the interview yet, but Mr. Yates, you are the founder and president of the American Karate and Taekwondo Foundation. So, how did that even come to happen? Of course, I'm sure you saw a need for it. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, when Mr. Steen stopped teaching in the 1970s, I guess in the early 70s, I continued to teach at various locations in Dallas. And as I had students that were coming up through the ranks, I had black belts from other schools come in too. And so I thought, well, I need to start an organization. And I had been part of Mr. Steen's American Karate Black Belt Association. So I basically started a little organization, and it grew and grew over the years. So we changed our name from Southwest to American, I think back in the 90s. And we've got schools now all across the country and around the world. And we're not a huge organization, but we've combined traditional Taekwondo along with karate. And so we give seminars and tournaments and promotions and so forth. And there are a lot of very credible martial arts organizations around. So, we're just one of them. But I guess because of my reputation as an instructor and an author, I've been able to collect people that have been very talented and credible. So I'm proud of the AKATO. You can go to akato.org, in fact, if you want to learn more about it.
And how do you spell that?
AKATO for American Karate and Taekwondo Organization. So akato.org is our website.
Wonderful. Troy, are you going to be the next person to join the organization?
I have to check it out.
Well, he's going to have to look over your resume, so hopefully you'll be approved.
Well, I know that anything that Mr. Yates should be called Grandmaster Yates, that he is a part of, is going to be great. It's going to be there's going to be no, just like in anything else, there are some people that are that you can't trust. But Mr. Yates, you can always trust him. He's always going to be there for you, and he's always going to help you. So can't really find a better guy, a better man like this.
Well, I appreciate that. Right back at you.
Thank you.
And although Grandmaster Yates is the correct name, I think what's more accurate is Grandmaster Writer, because of how many pieces you've wrote. Can you tell us and our audience about, how many pieces you've written? Why did you get into writing, and what do you write about?
Well, I've written probably 17 books, and probably well over 500 magazine articles in all the major martial arts publications. I started writing back in the mid 80s, and Troy, you'll find this story to be interesting. One of the guys I came up through the ranks with was Demetrius Avanis, known as the Golden Greek, who was who was a world champion, karate and kickboxing champion. And Greek tragically got killed in a airplane crash. So I was at his funeral in Dallas, and there was a who's who of martial artists. In fact, Chuck Norris was there because he was in Texas filming a movie at the time. And so I looked around at the crowd, and I thought, well, somebody needs to write something just about Demetrius. So I wrote a little article about Demetrius and the funeral and all the people who came to pay their respects, sent it into Black Belt Magazine, and they ran it. And then the editor of Black Belt Magazine, who was John Corcoran at the time, wrote back to me and said, hey, I really like your writing style. Would you write some more stuff for us? So I started writing magazine articles and eventually books and so forth. And so I have to really kind of say Demetrius Avanis started me on my writing career because I wanted to honor him with my very first article in the magazines. And so I've interviewed people and written monthly columns for Taekwondo Times and Inside Karate and everything for just decades now.
Troy, is it just me that gives me chills you saying this, because I'm not sure if you knew our last guest on the show last week was Mr. Hilary Sandoval, and he is the brother of Tony, who also passed away in that same plane crash. And
yeah.
I just think it's such a coincidence that, this is
Yeah.
brought up in this interview, and it's crazy. But yes, the Greek meant a lot to a lot of people. Of course, he was Troy's, idol, and he also influenced how Mr. Sandoval got into promoting and managing. So it's just crazy how it all connects.
Right. Small world, isn't it?
It is. But my last question for today's interview, Mr. Yates, is I would love to know why you love to write, and why do you think you were called to do this?
Well, like I said, I got involved in the martial arts early on, and I worked as a professor of communications at both Southern Methodist University and Dallas Theological Seminary. So with a background in communications and English, it was just easy to write in a coherent manner. In fact, I remember John Corcoran, when he asked me to write magazines for articles for Black Belt Magazine, he said he gets a lot of submissions from people who can't write in a style that's understandable for people. And he said, you really got a gift for that. So I have to credit John Corcoran, who's now passed away too, as one of the editors who really set me off on my writing journey. He helped me do my first couple of books and so forth. So that's just been a real blessing to be able to communicate the martial arts to a broader audience than just the people who are out on the mat in front of me. So, people all over the world have said, oh, I've read your books and so forth. And that's just really gratifying that I can extend the love of the martial arts, around the world in that manner.
I love it. Troy, is there anything else you want to add to today's interview?
Just so thankful Mr. Yates joined us today. He really is a great writer and a great martial artist, and you started in 1960 what?
65.
I was 3 years old, so it really is something that you've been maintaining your good health and training and martial arts, and the good Lord has really used you in a good way for sure for the martial arts. So I'm so thankful.
Well, yeah, I think it's really been my ministry over the decades and so forth.
Oh yes, sir. That's it, no doubt.
I love it. And again, Mr. Yates, thank you so much for your time, for being on the show with us and sharing your wisdom. We'd love to have you again on the show in the near future, because it sounds like we've got lots more to talk about, and maybe you can give us a class lesson for our next interview, because you've got a lot to teach and we would love to learn more. So.
Well, we can talk about the history of the martial arts in the United States, and that's one of my passions is to be a historian of the martial arts too. So sure, look forward to that.
I love it. Great. Well, thank you all so much again for watching If the Gloves Could Talk. I'm your host, Bryce George, and we'll be back right after this commercial break.
Oh, wow. Wow. So many memories here. I'm on to a new place now. This is really unbelievable. So when we opened up, we had our martial arts classes over here, and we had our kickboxing classes over here. But this is a great memory. So many memories made here. So many black belts. About 400 black belts during 1999 to 2022. I'm just now getting it, believe it or not. I've been in business for 41 years and with 2 karate schools, and I'm just now getting where I'm being able to get home a little earlier.
Some great stuff with Mr. Yates. Don't you feel a lot smarter after watching him? I mean, I could just listen to him all day. He has so much knowledge, and getting to listen and have him share that with us was just such an honor. We'll definitely be having him back on the show so he could give us a real lesson in karate. So stay tuned for that. But episode 9, I feel like was a great success for If the Gloves Could Talk. As always, it's so much fun getting to do this with Troy, and I'm really grateful to have this opportunity to learn from one of the greatest people ever in kickboxing and boxing. So we've got episode 10 next week. I can't believe we're already at double digits for our episodes. So be ready for another interview, another episode next week on If the Gloves Could Talk.